As a child, he had a job as a paperboy and he bought jazz magazines with his earnings. Now, apparently, these are actually magazines about jazz and not the modern euphemism for jazz mags.
Hey everybody out there, welcome back to another episode of the Audiophiles. I'm Andy, that's John, and today we are going to be listening to a song that John's going to offer up to me. So let's just cut to the chase. John, who's the artist? What's the track?
Okay, so we talked about this off a camera. It's a band you've definitely heard of called Roxy Music. And it's one of their early tracks. And this is a track called Ladytron.
Interesting title there. Okay. Well, my curiosity is piqued. Again, it's another one of those classic, I'm more familiar with their existence than I am their oeuvre. There's a lot of gaps to be filled when it comes to Roxy Music, so we might as well get back at it. Let me run off, give this Ladytron a listen, and I will come back and let you know what I think. Interesting sounds. Transmissions? What's this? No. Is that a woodwind or synthesized, some sort of means of replicating it? Friction.
You got me, girl, on the run around, got me all around town. You got me, girl, on the run around, and it's getting me down, getting me down. Lady, if you wanna find a lover, then you look no further, for I'm gonna be your only searching.
That bass piano.
Of the season, and my only reason is that I'll get you.
This is like a horse race. That bass. Yeah, this is a really interesting sound, the way they're building things and using like more forward instrumentation while also using these bits of like ambient sounds injected by I don't know, to be frank, like some sort of maybe a synthesizer or some other keys involved in helping that bass and piano during what I assume is like the verse bit sounded amazing together. Um, yeah, this is really interesting, and then it opens up to this chorus that has this like Kentucky Derby uh kind of feel to it with this rollicking, galloping kind of sound. Yeah, let's take it back a little bit. This. also that like clicking, almost kind of like a vibra slap, but a more like grinding kind of sound to it, is really interesting too. And it's insistent. It keeps appearing. And it sounds, every time it hits, it's like, huh, huh, huh. Yeah, this is really quite an interesting mix of sounds they have in this track.
I'll use you and I'll confuse you and then I'll lose you. Still you won't suspect me.
Even more of that sound, that galloping. Piano's nice there too. Oh shit, they're fading out already? What an oddly interesting song there, with all sorts of like kind of musical chicanery going on between the like ambient sounds to like the real frictious sounds, uh all coupled with like more conventional sounds as well, when you have like the piano and the bass and the lovely drums that are going on there. Obviously there's some really cool guitar lead that meshed well with all of that, but it's been a minute where I've had a song that was so musically interesting that it totally pulled me away from the lyrical content. Like I didn't catch anything. Like just upon reflecting there, I don't think I said use you, lose you, I think, maybe, and that's it. um yeah, they definitely put the Tron in Ladytron, as all of these sounds were a bit, not all of them. I mean, obviously the guitar, the bass, the drums, but a lot of them were a bit more foreign sounding, and I don't mean like, from way over there, that country or anything like that. It just means it sort of flies in the face of convention to some degree. And I like that. I like the sound a lot. This is definitely one of those where it will warrant another listen or few for me to really solidify how much I like it. However, there is no question that I did enjoy listening to this. Um, I just I enjoyed it, but as much as I enjoyed it, I am intrigued by it. Therefore, I think I need to give it another go or more, to really decide how much I liked the song. But yeah, it was very cool. There were some very interesting like sounds that sounded like they were coming from like an orchestron or a farfisa or like a mellotron or something like that. One of these not often but sometimes used key based instruments that aren't your typical like piano or keyboard or electric piano. There's something more to it and slightly different. And because I don't know exactly what it is, I think that only underscores at least one of two things: my own ignorance, or possibly both, my own ignorance, or this idea that they're using an instrument that isn't so common, you know. It wasn't a Fender Stratocaster that I heard. There was more going on there, and that made it intriguing, and it made it sound different from a lot of stuff. Although there were some striking similarities when I heard it, where I'm like, because I've heard it only so many times, I can pinpoint to what it's reminding me of, or what I heard sounds of, or what it may have influenced later. Um, like some of that stuff reminded me of Tranquility Base Hotel and Casino, in the odd key sounds that I heard. All of it, really liked it. I want to learn more about, obviously I have a lot to learn about the meaning of the song and the lyrics of the song, because as I said, I didn't catch shit in that regard. I'd really love to know more about this instrumentation and arrangement as well, because that really stood out to me a great deal. So there's a facet of it that didn't stand out to me at all, because I was so distracted by the other facet of the song that really did intrigue me, both of which I've got questions about. So let's get back to John and learn some more.
Magnus Pike, he's back. So you've enjoyed the delights of Ladytron. Clearly, the Orgasmatron 2000 was already taken by Woody Allen. By Roxy Music. What do you reckon?
Well, this is, and I mean this in the most complimentary way, because this phrase could be taken myriad, like it could be like neutral, it could be negative, it could be positive. It's a head scratcher for me, because there's a lot of interesting things going on and instruments being deployed, and I say that with even a question mark, because yes, they're instruments, but are they the real McCoy, or are they like this synthesized version of them, which we often run into when an eclectic instrument for what we're listening to makes an appearance. It's like, oh, is that real, or was that someone patched in something through a little key program or something like that? But it starts with this like faint static like frequency sounds that slowly grow louder, but not abrasively loud. They just become more present, or come more into focus. There's also like an interesting motif being played along with this, and I'm not sure here we go, if this is like a synthesized sound meant to replicate some sort of higher registered woodwind, or if it's an actual woodwind, because it had this like low fluty type sound to it at times. It was really hard for me to put my finger on. I liked it. But yeah, so this little instrument is providing the melody to the track, or at least at this point, while all this weird ambient sounds make themselves more clear, and also I think join the fray as like more of them come along, as the sound continues to swell and the song becomes fuller. And this movement of the song comes to an end at around the 105 mark, as vocals join the track. And at first they just deliver over this like minimal sustained sound that I assume is coming from a synthesizer or perhaps some other keyed instrument. It's not too long into this that we get treated to a little like touch of bass frolicking that kind of is foreshadowing for what's to come, because then the music kind of builds around that bit and the beat that joins it. So yeah, I'm loving this. By the time the beat drops at like the 117 mark and this becomes sort of the main focal point music, I'm loving this. Like, I guess the verse is what we're in the midst of here. Yeah, really loving this sound. There's this really nice warbling sounding key instrument that sounds familiar, but only familiar, there's an exception to the rule, and sometimes there's the saying the exception is the rule. I don't hear this often, but I've heard it enough, or a few times, for it to stand out and make me think, oh my god, I've heard this sound before. And it really reminds me of that huge shift in sound that Turner used in Tranquility Base Hotel and Casino, where he starts using these old 50s, 60s styled keyed instruments to create these really weird, I guess what he was going for was this otherworldly kind of sound, given the name of the album, and just kind of like the whole motif thereof. So I'm catching bits of this as well and loving the sound of it. I don't know if it's like an orchestron or a farfisa or a mellotron or something like that, but it's
John.
mellotron. Okay. Okay. Cool. But it sounds super fucking cool in the mix, and it gives this whole other like vantage point to this, song, this rock song or whatever you want to call it. So I really enjoyed that. The bass continues to stand out, as does the fairly liberal use of this. It's like a vibra slap, but it has a distinct kind of winding, cranking sound rather than a boing sound to it. But it's that same sort of gist that a vibra slap would offer. But it verges on the line of becoming annoying, but it falls short of that. So it's like insistent. It's just there. It's always going to remind you that it's there, which is a little unnerving. I don't know if that's. I don't. As a whole, I don't get like this isn't one of those eerie, spooky songs, but maybe it's playing a role musically for some sort of theme that they're trying to illustrate. I don't know, but I mean, as close as it got to pissing me off, I actually kind of liked it by the time it came to an end, if I'm being honest with you. And just as I'm becoming familiar with all this instrumentation that I've had to this point, um, someone opens up the gates of the horses competing in the Kentucky Derby at the 147 mark, and we get this galloping sort of motif that comes along that is really perpetuated by the rhythm section of the band. I mean, you've got this tom mark. Now I don't know if it's the lower of the two mounted toms or if it's like a, to my ears, higher sounding floor tom or something like that. But then you got that coupled with that 1-2 motif that the bass is playing, where it's doing that 1-2 1-2 1-2, and it's just doing, and it creates that kind of galloping feel to it all. So I really enjoyed that. That was a lot of fun. There's a peculiar sounding descending motif played as the rhythm section works together to create that galloping sound that I just alluded to. This portion continues for a bit before the horses are reined back in around the 2:14 mark. And the singer again rejoins the mix, and the music shifts back to that verse motif that I enjoyed so much, that preceded the galloping bit. Speaking of which, we are back to the racetracks, but this time, um, the head of the pack comes in the form of a blasting lead guitar motif, and it screeches and wails over top the same galloping rhythm section from before. And I can't help but really hone in again on that no matter how much more shit they add to this, it's this 1-2 1-2 motif of the bass that constantly draws me back into it. Now, I don't know if that's my bass playing ears or if that's just the how persistent it is in its in what it's playing, but I love that. The guitars open up a bit, allowing the keys to really shine during this portion. And then we get these immense, like, staticky crash sounds at the 329 mark, and then again at the 333, and they're kind of like separated by these intervals of like a few seconds. And in between each of these, or in these intervals, again, you catch bits of this piano flourish going on that sounds lovely. These odd winding sounds as they descend and ascend, and sprawl in different directions, also sort of happening in these moments. All of the song then begins to fade out. And yeah, I didn't catch any of the lyrics because my attention was so drawn to the instrumentation in this one listen. And there was a lot of oddball musical chicanery going on in this one as well. So much so that it really captured and held my attention throughout the entire duration. And I liked it. It's one of those that I don't yet know how much I like it or to what extent, because it clearly is going to require another listen or two or few. So yeah, for the most obvious reason, all the lyrics that I missed, and perhaps the meaning of the song, and what choices from a musical standpoint could be validated or underscored by the lyrical content. Sometimes the sounds we hear make all that much more sense when we read the lyrical content and understand what the song is actually about. But also, even absolute lyrics aside, there was so much interesting shit going on musically that I already know, that there's stuff about this that I don't know, like that I missed upon the first listen that I'll probably catch, or maybe the first time that 1-2 1-2 galloping motif on the bass captured my attention. If I could just block myself from hearing that on the third or fourth listen, other really cool shit that was happening at that time will stand out to me. all of that kind of comes into play here in underscoring how I do like it. I just don't know to what extent at this juncture. It was really cool. There were some really fascinating instruments happening in this, and choices of how to use them and deploy them that I really liked. So it's got me. I just don't know how much it's got me at this point. So tell me more. I'm sure you'll only give me more reason to go back to the trough on this one.
Okay, I'll give some context to this before we get into it. So as a kid, I remember Roxy music, Avalon, stuff like that. It's very slow and sort of slinky cocktail hour type music. Mr. Ferry was the epitome of the sophisticated crooner, with his slicked hair and his really nice suits and a supermodel on his arm. And so I knew, and through my teens, I knew Roxy music in terms of the singles. But it was only when I was 18, I think it was, and I was at college. I'd been to something. I wasn't drinking for some reason, and we'd run out of some booze. So I offered to go to the sort of all-nighter to get some more. I jumped into my car and the radio was on. Whizzed round the corner 10 minutes, got the booze, come back, parked up. And as I did, this song came on the radio. And I was absolutely transfixed and I couldn't move for the next 5 minutes. And they're all waiting for their booze inside the house. And I'm still outside the car, listening to this, thinking, this is fucking amazing. And then something happened that distracted me. And I didn't find out who it was. And it took me a little while to work out that it was Roxy Music. And then you find out that there's one definite genius in this track and one very underestimated guy. So yeah, and this is like beginnings of art rock and glam rock, and this is a hell of a track, and it really is something. And it's not easily digestible in one listening. I get that. So I will go into a bit about Roxy Music. We'll just concentrate on this track, this album, and the starting period. So they were formed in London in 1970, and they're known as art rock, glam rock, pop rock, and sophisto-pop. Interesting story about how they started. So Brian Ferry, this cool, sleek guy, he was born in Washington, the original Washington, which is in County Durham at the top, which obviously the area and your president was named after. And he was born to a working class family. His father was a farm labourer who also looked after pit ponies. Not quite the image when you think of Brian Ferry. As a child, he had a job as a paperboy. And he bought jazz magazines with his earnings. Now, apparently, these are actually magazines about jazz and not the modern euphemism for jazz mags. He then went on to study fine art at Newcastle University. Again, you don't associate the Geordie accent with Mr. Ferry. Wait, man, love is the truck. It's not really that.
Isn't Durham kind of up there, though? Like by...
Yeah, it's just below Newcastle, Sunderland, in between. Exactly. He studied fine art at Newcastle University, and some of his paintings were actually exhibited at the Tate Gallery in 1970. Sure. He moved down to London in 1968, and he taught art and pottery at Holland Park School for Girls. He lost that job for holding impromptu record listening sessions instead of teaching. So he decided to advertise for a keyboardist to collaborate with him, and a guy called Graham Simpson, who was a bassist that he knew from his Newcastle Uni band. They were in a band together called The Gas Board. Andy McKay replied to Ferry's adverts. Although more proficient on saxophone and oboe, McKay owned an EMS VCS3 synthesizer, so he was in. McKay had met a certain Brian Eno during the university days. Both were interested in very avant-garde electronic music, which is really the beginnings of it around this time. Although Eno was a non-musician, he could operate a synthesizer and owned a Revox reel-to-reel tape machine. So McKay convinced him to join the band as technical advisor, and before long he was an official member of the group. Rounding out the original sextet was guitarist Roger Bunn and drummer Dexter Lloyd, who was a classically trained timpanist. The group's name was derived from Ferry and McKay making a list of old cinemas. And Ferry picked Roxy because it had a resonance and some faded glamour and didn't really mean anything. After learning of an American band with the name Roxy, Ferry changed the name to Roxy Music, a play on rock music. In 71, Lloyd left the band, was replaced by Paul Thompson. Bun left the group at the end of the summer of 71. In October, they advertised a melody maker seeking the perfect guitarist. The successful applicant was David O'List, former guitarist with The Nice. Phil Manzanera also auditioned, and although he wasn't hired, the group were impressed enough that he joined as their roadie. So they constantly practiced for a year before they actually started playing. And then in early 72, guitarist O'List quit the group abruptly after an altercation with Thompson, which took place at an audition for a new management called EG Management. So when O'List didn't show up for the next rehearsal, Manzanera was asked to come along with a pretext of becoming the band's sound mixer. When he arrived, he was invited to play guitar, and he quickly realized that this was an informal audition. Unbeknownst to the rest of the group, Manzanera had secretly learned their entire repertoire, and as a result, killed it and was immediately hired. So it's brilliant.
That's awesome.
2 weeks after he joined the band, they signed with said management, EG Management. The reason why I mention this is because they did the really unusual thing. The management financed the recording of the tracks for their debut album, Roxy Music, which was recorded March, April 72. So it was really unusual that they had the finished package, both the album and the really famous cover artwork by photographer Carl Stoker was completed before the group even signed with Island Records. Now, normally I'd point there and say that's the debut album, but it isn't. That's the second album because, of course, I have the debut album. But I've got a weird copy which somehow is about sort of half a centimetre too big for that freaking frame, so it can't fit in. But there it is. That's the famous cover.
Yeah.
And I'll a bit more about that later. And just inside, I have to show you, this is so funny. Pictures of the guys there and what they look like. Yeah, there's the ferry there. And where is... Oh, there's Eno. There you go. Lovely bunch of lads, eh? So yeah, A&R staff for Island, Tim Clark, later stated that although he argued strongly that Island should contract them, company boss Chris Blackwell at first seemed unimpressed, and Clark assumed he wasn't interested. However, a few days later, Clark was in the hallway of Island Records examining the cover for the album, and Blackwell walked past and said, he looked at it, he said, "That looks great. Have we signed them yet?" So they signed 2 days later, and the album was released and due to good, decent reviews and became a major success, reaching number 10 in the UK albums chart in September 72. To bring more attention to the studio album, they did this thing, which you wouldn't think of doing now. But they decided to record and release a single, which was a non-album single. And they think, oh, if you like this, you might like the album as well. So their debut single was Virginia Plain, very famously, which scored a number 4 hit on the UK singles chart. And the band's eclectic visual image, as you saw a bit of there, was captured in their debut performance on BBC's Top of the Pops. And it became a cornerstone for the glam music sort of trend in the UK. Them and Bowie just really pushed it. The success of the single caused renewed interest in the album. So this track, Ladytron, is the second track on the debut album. And just to give you a breakdown of personnel at this point, Brian Ferry, Hono pianette, electric piano, mellotron, vocals, Andy McKay, oboe and saxophone. Real instruments.
That's what I was hearing then? I guess that was the oboe? Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, when you said earlier, when you were introducing the members of the band, sort of how they met, you like quickly in passing mentioned that he played the oboe. I was like, oh. Okay.
Brian Eno, VCS3 synthesizer and tape effects. Graham Simpson bass guitar, Paul Thompson drums, and Phil Manzanera electric guitar. So the song was written by Ferry. He wrote most of the songs up for the first few albums. I mean, a hell of a sort of talent there. That's just, you think he's just a crooner, but a proper musician. The song has distinctive instrumentation, it says here, including an oboe solo, liberal use of the Mellotron's famous 3 violins tape set, which is that sort of weird sort of sound you were talking about, and much processing of the other instruments by Brian Eno via his VCS3 synthesizer and tape echo. The sound at the start of the song was created by Eno after Brian Ferry asked him to produce something reminiscent of the lunar landing. That's what it came up with. Interestingly, looking at some of the reviews, reviewing for Crim magazine in 1973, Robert Kreisgau, who I have to say, can be a right little bitch sometimes. Um, so this is why I've included this. I mean, even got this wrong. He said from the drag queen on the cover, it's not, it's a very famous model, to the top fop finery in the centerfold, which you've just seen, to the polished deformity of music on the record. This celebrates the kind of artifice that would come to be seen as unhealthy as the sheen on the piece of rotten meat. Right now, though, it's decorated with enough weird hooks to earn an A for side one. Side two leans too heavily on the synthesizer, brackets, played by a balding, long-haired eunuch lookalike named Eno, without the saving grace of drums and a bass line. So, yeah, what a twat.
That's the exact description that was going on in my head when you held up the image of him from the record. That's so funny.
Having said that, it's universal praise elsewhere. Uncut placed it at number 9 as a list of best debut albums of all time. And it was also featured in the book 1001 Albums You Must Hear Before You Are Sentenced to Die. And here it is in all its glory, double page spread. Fantastic. There's Mr. Ferry looking great. There's a really nice version of this from the old Grey Russell test, but I thought I'd just give you the studio version first, because it's probably a bit much with all the manic stuff shit going on. If we go over the page, Pink Moon, Nick Drake, and Paul Simon's debut album with his big, Parker. Yeah. Fantastic. Tim Buckley, Greens from LA. T-Rex, a slider. Wow, what a... and then we go the other way. We're still on 72, yeah. Alice Cooper Schools Out. So Mr. Bowie there. The Rise and Fall of Ziggy Stardust and the Spice of Mars, and the Reverend Al Green, Let's Stay Together. What a time to be alive. So yeah, I shall now go into the lyrics.
Really quickly, before you do, John, just something that I want to underscore and bring back just to kind of cover my butt, because I don't always, I know it seems that I look for excuses to correlate things, anything back to Turner or Alex Turner when I'm doing song reviews, but that name of the album is Tranquility Base Hotel and Casino. Tranquility Base is the landing spot of the lunar landing in '69, and you just pretty much said that Eno was inspired or searching to capture a sound that would evoke what one might associate with the lunar landing spot. So now, without any evidence other than this conversation and some little factoids, I'm led to think, of course, Turner had to know this about this track and about Eno to want to recapture that sound himself or in his own way using a similar approach, which is super fucking cool to learn in real time or just kind of piece together here as we discuss this. So that's a lot of fun, man. That was really cool.
Yeah. I mean, good news is you're only 2 steps away from Kevin Bacon, but also, but it's that sort of Stereolab, the same thing. That early sort of late 60s synthesizer, which, Pan, Muse, and others as well, has that weird sci-fi crappy sound to it. Sure. Space Odyssey and all that sort of stuff. So it has all that feel to it. So it all ticks the boxes from what they wanted, what Turner wanted to do as well. Yeah. Ticks the box. Yeah. Right. Really lyrics. There's not a lot to them, and it's quite interesting. So you got me, girl, on the run around. You got me all around town. You got me, girl, on the runaround, and it's getting me down. Getting me down. Lady, if you want to find a lover, then you look no further, for I'm going to be your only. Searching at the start of the season, and my only reason is that I'll get to you. Breaks and all that. I'll find some way of connection, hiding my intention. And then I'll move up close to you. I'll use you and I'll confuse you. And then I'll lose you. Still, you won't suspect me. And then more breaks. Now, there is some hilarious AI annotations from the lyric website, which I had to share to you, interpreting these very complex lyrics. So that first line, you got me, girl, on the run around. And they put, he's seeking her affection, but it's not easy to get.
Thank God for AI.
This next one, I'll find some way of connection. They put, he's going to find a way in that it makes his desire seem innocent. And then he says, I'll lose you, and then I'll confuse you, and then I'll lose you. And they put, he just wants to have sex. After us, she'll be in love with him, but he'll be gone. he obviously doesn't care about her feelings. So perhaps Ladytron refers to his view of her not human, just an object with a certain function. In this case, copulation. That's hilarious. So yeah, I mean, it's this sort of Lothario sort of character, and there are arguments about whether he's dehumanizing his object of his desires because he's gonna, and then, or it could be a female sex robot as well.
Yeah, or couldn't it be that he is the Ladytron? Like, I'm Ladytron 5000. I can take down any girl anytime.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, he's built
Maybe.
to do this. You know what I mean? Because
Yeah,
it's sort of like you said, a Lothario. He's kind of portraying himself to be this womanizing onto the next character that
Yeah.
only a robot could accomplish. Yeah, that's what it
And you
sounds
feel that the galloping instrumentals is their sort of, them coming together, as it were.
Yes, let's call it that.
Yes.
They're lucky they came together.
Yes, back to the very rare, and back to the story. So yeah, just to say the early style in particular, because Eno was with them only for the first two albums, but I'd say the first 3 to 4. The presentation, it was influenced by the arts college backgrounds of its principal members. So Ferry, McKay, and Eno had all studied at prominent UK art colleges during the mid to late 60s, when these institutions were kind of introducing courses that avoided traditional art teaching practices. They were going off and doing wacky things. Band's self-titled debut album was the first in a series with increasingly sophisticated covers, with art direction by Ferry in collaboration with his friend Nick DeVille. The album artwork imitated the usual visual style of classic sort of girly and fashion magazines. So yeah, this sort of like model shoot, as it were, idea behind it. And they did feature some high fashion shots of scantily clad models, Amanda Lear, Marilyn Cole, and Jerry Hall. Each of which had romances with Ferry during the time of their contributions. So we Ladytron them as well. As well as model Carrie Ann Moller, who appears on the cover of the first album, and this is not a drag queen. Price girl. And she was not actually involved with anyone in the band, but she later married Mick Jagger's brother, Chris. Ooh, there you go. Lucky escape. In 2005, The Guardian argued that Roxy Music is the second most influential British band after the Beatles. They wrote, somehow, in a landscape dominated by Led Zeppelin at one end and the Osmonds at the other, they managed to reach the top 10 with a heady mixture of futurism, retro rock and roll, camp, funny noises, silly outfits, art techniques, film references, and oboe solos. And although their popularity has ebbed and flowed, their influence has been strikingly consistent. In 2019, The Economist also described them as the best British art rock band since the Beatles, arguing that among English rock acts of the time, their spirited adventure and their impact was surpassed only by David Bowie. Roxy Music's sound and visual style has been described as significant influence on later genres and subcultures such as electronic music, punk rock, disco. I hate the phrase punk rock, just call it punk. Disco, new wave, and new romantic. Artists who are cited or have been described as being influenced by Roxy Music include Echo and the Bunnymen, the Melvins, Wire, Parquet Courts, Nile Rodgers, Susie and the Banshees, Duran Duran, U2, The Smiths, Spandau Ballet, Radiohead, Scissor Sisters, Talking Heads, Goldfrapp, Pulp, Sex Pistols, The Human League, and Franz Ferdinand. It's a good list. Yeah, Sex Pistols guitarist Steve Jones named his first band The Strand after the Roxy Music song Do the Strand. Jones has also described Roxy Music's style as strong influence on the later punk craze, of which he would go on to become a part of, and cited their first album as one of his all-time favourites. And I read his book, Lonely Boy, his biography, and he just mentioned a lot about Roxy Music and Bowie in that as well. The electronic British band Ladytron took their name from the title of this song, and the British band Bananarama took their name in part from the Roxy Music song Pyjamarama. There you go, I didn't know that. Roxy Music went on to release 8 studio albums in total, 6 live albums, and 9 compilation albums, totaling 5.8 million album sales, 1 million in America and 3.4 million in the UK. Brian Ferry, with Roxy Music and as solo artist, has sold 30 million albums worldwide. So there you go. Yeah, they're really more important than people realise, I think. They're great, great, and really interesting as well. And I think with Ferry and with Eno, got some really interesting points of view coming across. So quite unique and individual sounds. I shall give you some more.
Please do. I'm interested.
Really, really interesting stuff. Cool. All right, I shall wrap things up. Thanks for listening, Sandy.
Thank you.
Folks out there, I suspect there's a number of you that will be familiar with this. Tell us what you think. Please hit the like button if you like this and drop some comments. We'd love to hear what you think about this track, this album as well. Does it slack off on the second side? Well, I don't think so, but you know, you can tell us. And other Roxy music, songs, stories, whatever. Tickles your fancy. Please drop us a line. We'd love to hear from you. And if you haven't subscribed, you too could be on the cover of a future Roxy music album. But we really appreciate everybody who does support the channel. That being said, thanks so much for listening, and we will see all of you on the next episode of the Audiophiles.
See you later, guys.